T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Shout out to US ARC and all US ARC members. If you don't know what US ARC is, don't be ashamed. Just go ahead and click the third link in the description below. See what US ARC is all about, okay? You never know when legislations are going to hit your backyard, so that's why it's very important to consider becoming a US ARC member today. These numbers really do matter, and they look at it for consideration when it comes to battling legislation. So first and foremost, thank you, Phil Goss. Thank you to anybody out there who partners up and volunteers with US ARC organization. Thank you for anyone out there who's a US ARC member. And if you can't become a US ARC member today, please talk about it on your platforms. Let your neighbors know, let all your pet stores know what US ARC is here for, and it's here to fight for our animal rights. Thank you to every US ARC member and US ARC supporter out there. True.
All right, what's up, everybody? Hope you're having a great Sunday. You're now tapped into the coolest reptile podcast in the world, the Trap Talk Reptile Network. This is episode 44, and we have Mariah here from Reptifiles. Really excited about this episode. As you guys know, I'm a vet. I don't specialize in reptiles, but I do some consulting on the side, and so a lot of times I have clients that, their animal's sick because they're not doing proper care. So her care guides that I've sent have been extremely helpful for people. So I'm really excited to hear about her journey with that and where she gets the information, things she's learned along the way, how it's influenced her outlook on reptile care. And I think that's something that all of us can appreciate and learn from today. So again, really excited to bring her on in a bit. Hope you guys are having a great Sunday. I'm trying to think of any quick updates. Started packing some stuff yesterday and today. So you guys know I'm doing the big move to Florida in July. So I'm kind of spreading it out and doing a room on the weekends. So that I should have it pretty much all the way done by the time I move. Because of that, I'm not breeding a whole lot this year just because it is only me doing the big 20-hour move. So I don't want to have to move ton of animals, but I hatched a clutch of leopard geckos, so some firebolt clown babies that are pretty, and then I recently got into chewies or chahuas. I know people call them cahuas, but I'll call them chahuas. She actually laid a clutch of eggs. This is her first clutch. It looks like definitely one is fertile. The other one I think may be infertile, which isn't super uncommon for their first clutch. Been really excited for that. And then, I think I guys told you last week the ball pythons, one clutch. They should pit before I move, thankfully. So those will be some ultramalpides. So try not to breed that much, but kind of had some eggs being laid. So pretty exciting. So with that, we'll kind of go towards the sponsors real quick, and then I'll bring Mariah on. We'll get started. So, of course, you guys know of Channing with ReptiCo, the official sponsor of the Girls Who Love Reptiles podcast. Channing is her own little entrepreneur, so she's the daughter of Dawn and Billy Rice from Rice Reptile, starting her own reptile business of breeding really high-quality, high-end crested geckos and hognose, as well as they'll add additional species along the way. And so go ahead and follow them on MORPH Market. Follow them on Instagram if you're not already under the official ReptiCo. And, of course, they are having their own YouTube channel. They're really pushing out those videos weekly on the Rice Reptiles channel, so go and subscribe to them on there to follow their journey and see what all they're up to. And then, of course, we got Blake from Blake's Exotic Feeders. We're always wanting to feed our animals the best quality proteins that we can, so quail is a good food source for a lot of our animals. So go hit up Blake, tell him that the Trap sent you, he'll get you set up right with some quail. And then shout out to RGI. If you guys haven't watched the episode with MJ, Emilio, and Justin from Cano from last Thursday on shed testing, highly recommend. Fantastic episode. really brought to life how important shed testing is for your business and in the long haul and being competitive in the ball python market game. And then we'll finish it off with clutch. So, of course, started by Justin at Canova, but a really good way to set up your ball python hatchlings and breeding season. Makes printing out labels a breeze. I'm really excited to do that with my own collection once I get everything moved and settled in. And with that, I'll bring on Miss Mariah, and then we will get started. All right. How's it going?
Hey, going great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you. Made a little short intro there, like I promised. And yeah, really excited to have you on. I've used your content a lot when dealing with clients with reptiles, and I found it super helpful just because there is so much out there, of course, when they Google, and there's conflicting information at your big box pet stores is not always accurate, really frustrating from a vet point of view. So this has been a show I've been looking forward to. So if you want, just kind of go ahead and introduce yourself and what Reptifiles is and how you kind of started that.
All right. So yeah, I'm Mariah Healy, author of Reptifiles.com. Reptifiles is a web-based database of reptile care information, mostly organized into care sheets and then the longer care manuals or care guides, depending on what term you want to use. I'll probably be using care guides moving forward for SEO reasons. There are over 88 care sheets hosted on the site at the moment, spread across snakes, lizards, and chelonians. Most of them are lizards, some snakes, a handful of chelonians, working on it, but that's kind of how the distribution of species in the hobby goes as a whole. Reptifiles so what sets Reptifiles apart as a care database is it is science focused, science first, evidence based.
Like it. Love it.
Yeah. That makes it very difficult. It started as just kind of a collection of what works, and which, is good, but it's very easy for misinformation to sneak into a source that is based on what works. And it does help filter out a lot of the nonsense when you focus on what works. But yeah, it's not a perfect system. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Reptifiles started out as actually just a random blog that I was using. At the time, I worked in search engine optimization, SEO marketing as a content writer. And one of the perks that my employer offered was actually a little sandbox site, because their idea was if we are learning how to manage our own site, we get more hands-on experience self-training in search engine optimization, and we'll be more effective employees. And it was a good idea. I learned a lot. I attended the weekly trainings on how to manage a site, and tried a lot of different things. And around the same time, my sister was a food blogger, and even though she's my younger sister, we've had this very competitive dynamic, which is actually very one-sided.
Okay,
like,
so
she's not competitive at all, but me, I'm like, like no one, like my sister cannot be good at something without me being good at it as well, preferably better.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And here I am, almost 32 years old, and I'm still not over that. Mm-hmm. But so since she was doing well in the blogosphere, I was like, I bet I could do this. And especially I was getting my degree in writing, and so I'm like, yeah, I can do this. And nothing clicked, like I tried my hand at, like the food blogging idea, the diary blog, the lifestyle blogging. And around that time, my husband and I got a couple of bearded dragons, and I really had a lot of fun researching how to care for them. Mm-hmm. I guess I should take a step back here. This is something I've been passionate about my entire life, basically. There are records in my parents' files from when we were children, of me compiling information on how to care for animals, whether it was an iguana, a horse, a betta fish, you name it. I was very passionate about animals as a child, about caring for them. Did I do a good job? That's a different story. But I really liked learning about them. And it wasn't so much the natural history aspect of it that I was interested in. I wanted to know the husbandry and making available resources work in captivity to help them thrive in captivity. So I went through a lot of pets. As you can imagine, there were a couple of green and nulls. I was raised with a series of red-eared sliders back in the day when, you know, you could get them as babies pretty easily.
Yep, at those little fairs. Yep.
Yep. I had, there was a rat at one point, snails, frogs, toads. At one point, I had an aquarium full of pond scum and various microscopic pond wildlife that I thought was really fun. And much to the mortification of my 4th grade teacher at sharing time. I've got baby water boatman. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of pets, but the main fixation was horses. I was really big into horses. I was that horse girl. Like, every school has one. I was that one.
Yep. Did you do like 4-H, Western, or English? What was your style?
In the lessons, I took both Western and English style lessons. And then around the time of the recession, the lessons stopped. I did the hippology division of 4-H. So that's the one area of 4-H that you can do without having a horse.
Yep.
So I had a binder about yay thick full of trivia about horses that I had to familiarize myself with, and I did so very happily.
Yeah. That brings back a lot of memories. Yeah. I was a 10-year 4-H myself, so yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
I did all that horses, cows, pigs. Yeah. So you're I remember the hippology that binder. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I would spend my weekends at the local barn volunteering as a stall mucker in the hopes that I would be able to get to groom a horse. That was like, if I got to groom a horse after all that, that was peak.
Day made. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that for years. And then things kind of calmed down in high school as I turned my focus to, my studies, and it became pretty clear that, I think the last straw was a red-eared slider, which my mom got rid of in the summer after my freshman year. And she didn't like the way it smelled. I thought I did a really, really good job of keeping that tank clean. Like, honestly, I was cleaning that thing like weekly. I was doing a really good job with my Dawn dish soap and my bleach, and but no, she wasn't a fan. So she got rid of it behind my back when I was out of state.
That stinks. Probably came home.
Yeah.
Like, where's it? Oh man.
And so after that, I was like, okay, well, this is pointless, and redirected my attention for a while. I wanted to be a vet, actually. I wanted to go into large animals. I was really passionate about radiology.
Oh, wow. Cool.
I had aside from animal husbandry, I had a really strong interest, still do, in anatomy and physiology. And, human medicine is very interesting, but I figured if I could merge the two, that would be ideal. And then I started looking at salaries and realizing that maybe human medicine was a better way to go.
Yeah, I don't know. Nowadays, it's a little better now with the
little better, yeah.
Still, well, yeah, depending on your situation, yeah, humans you do get paid quite a bit. So.
And it really depends on like what area you're into. And I was going to go into I wanted to go in the radiology area, but then I realized that I had fixated too much on a particular school. It was my parents' alma mater, and I'd kind of been indoctrinated into going there my whole life. And so I get there and I realized that there was not a direct route to becoming a radiologist. when I was there, and so I was like, well, I'll start in PD bio and I'll work from there. Exercise science caught my eye, and so I was like, oh, well, I could go into athletic training. I really like working with teenagers. It could be fun to be a high school athletic trainer. So, things are really changing, but we're kind of still staying in like the musculoskeletal area of interest. And, animals were just kind of they were shelved for the moment. And then I got married earlier than I thought I was going to, and realized that if I wanted to have any kind of work-life balance, athletic training is a really bad choice of career.
As is medicine.
As is medicine in general. Yeah, so I had a life crisis. I took a year off and went back to school into writing. And it was around this time period that I got the Bearded Dragons, and things started to fall into place. I went back to school. Let's see. And, as it usually goes when you get your first reptile, it's never just one.
Oh.
So within a year, I think we'd gotten a Dumeral's boa and an Indonesian blue-tongued skink as well.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And I continued to put the information that I found up on my website. It was mostly just kind of if anybody finds this helpful, it's on the internet, but this is also something for me to reference. It's a filtered, quick reference index I can just pull up on my phone easier than, say, a Google Doc. So, and then, I was thinking this would be really great if I could make it my life, but there's not really a way to, this isn't a career. This isn't just writing about how to care for reptiles. You can't get a degree for that. And who would hire me? Right. So I was kind of stuck. I stuck with the writing thing because I was enjoying it. And then I took a technical writing class. And my professor was a very unusual guy. He did freelancing for Qualtrics, if you're familiar with them.
Yeah,
and
I think I've heard of
yeah, they're pretty big.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
And I spent a ton of time in his office hours. Because our end of term paper was like the graduation requirement 20-30 page paper. And I'm like, I got this in the bag. Writing, no problem. The rest of my classmates, who were mostly science majors, they were struggling. But me, I'm like, sure. And he says to us, this can be a technical manual on literally anything. And I'm like, anything, you say? And gears start turning. I'm like, what about how to care for a lizard? And he's like, sure. Can you stretch it to 20 pages? And I'm like, oh, I can exceed it. Especially double spaced. Are you kidding me?
Double spaced. 12
Yeah, this will be a cinch. So the hardest part was really just formatting it and making sure that it hit all of the requirements in the rubric. But I spent a ton of time refining it in his office. And he saw my passion for it. And he's like, you could probably make a career out of this. You'd have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
But you could probably make a career for it. I see your passion. I see how much you enjoy this. And if you pursue the right avenues, don't give up on it.
That's
so
awesome.
I was like, wow, that's really interesting advice to get from a professor. And honestly, it changed my life. And he was the only professor I ever really bothered to develop a relationship with. And after that, Reptifiles went from being just this, side blog to something I really started to hit hard. And when I changed jobs, when I left school to take online classes and work full time, I was really hammering away at this as something really in all of my spare time. Was if I had spare time at my computer, whether it was at home or at work, I was writing and I was researching reptiles about the ones that I had, about ones that interested me. I think the first species I wrote about that I hadn't personally cared for was hognose snakes. the North American hognose. And that, because I hadn't cared for them personally, I realized I really needed to step up my game. And so that's when I started integrating natural history data into the research. Because I'm like, I don't have personal context for these animals. So if I need to get to know what they are and what they're like, I need to look at them in the wild. And so that's what I did. And I started looking at academic papers for the first time, embarrassingly enough. I just didn't really think it was all that necessary before, with the bearded dragons and otherwise. And it was this gap that really stretched me. Well, that's not true. I guess I did a little bit for the blue tongue skinks where other sources failed. Mostly because, graduation requirements, the paper had to be cited, cited well. And so that pushed me in that direction. And that changed things. And then I read at least a couple, I don't remember how many had been published at that time, but Arcadia's books on reptile husbandry really helped shape my philosophy, because I was realizing that if I needed to go forward, I needed a center, a core philosophy that would shape my approach to reptile husbandry, because I couldn't just report on all of the information out there. I certainly, could, but it would be confusing. And my goal was clarity, so that somebody could read what I was giving and know what direction to go in for the best welfare of their animal. And that's tough.
Yeah. There's a lot of products out there, and they have that specific reptile in there, and it gets that person to buy it, and that may not be the right lighting or product for that species. Is frustrating. So they get confused.
Yeah, and the question of best is really hard to answer.
Yeah.
So I really just had to pick something. I had to pick a context, and the context I chose was natural history-based reptile husbandry with ignoring breeding, actually. So just for pet keepers, not for breeders. Where I had never bred reptiles at that point, and I was very aware of how unqualified I was in that sphere, so I wasn't even going to touch it. There was a stint with beta breeding, attempted, never succeeded when I was a kid, and guppies. Anyway,
guppies.
I'm sorry, any idiot can breed guppies.
Yeah, I did that, and I give them to my grandma. Yeah, she had her own thing.
They're pretty, but they're really not hard.
Nah, just as long as you get both sexes and don't kill them, then you're okay.
Yeah, or buy from a mixed tank.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, that brings back a lot of memories. So
yeah, oh boy.
So
yeah, and that's more or less how Reptifiles got started. Was this gradual, just like it felt like fate. Just I go from being passionate about animal husbandry as a child, and life just kind of redirected me back into it.
I like that journey of it. It's really fascinating.
And I find this happens to a lot of people, actually, where there is a childhood passion or interest that resurfaces as adults. If they're happy in their choice of career, usually it's tied to their childhood. My husband wanted to be an architect. Now he does building integration management, BIM. For HVAC. So basically he's a architectural editor.
Okay.
He makes sure that the architect's ideas are actually applicable.
Makes sense. So yeah,
they need that help. So it's interesting and he took a very circuitous route to this as well. So it's just funny how life shakes out that way. And now Reptifiles has grown a lot. I mean, it's been 9-ish years, I want to say, since I started Reptifiles from the very beginning, and maybe 10, depending on where you're counting. And a lot has happened, really, since then. I've grown a lot in my understanding of reptile husbandry. Now, I have been accepted into the master's program at West Liberty University for zoo science, which is
fascinating, cool.
Natural history-based exotic animal husbandry. There's only 3 schools in the nation that offer programs on that. So I study under Zach Loafman, who published a paper on natural history-based husbandry for false water cobras. And it was that paper, actually, and listening to an episode where he was being interviewed on the Animals at Home podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to this, and at first I was angry. I was like, this is my turf. Get off. Like, you know? And then I realized, wait a minute, you're a professor. You teach this, and I need to break into academia. I can't be this casual forever.
And you
and I should hook up.
Competitive, so I don't know about that.
You're seeing that, right? Yeah, I was incensed at first, and so I got in touch with him immediately. He said, of all things, you know, hit me up on Facebook, and I'm like, okay, that's random, but sure. And I talked to him on the phone, I think the same day, and he's like, wait, you're a Reptifiles? I know you. You could get into this program easy. Cool. And I was like, wow, all the work that I've been doing might actually amount to something. And so right now I'm on a bit of a hiatus. Having two young children makes everything difficult, actually.
Imagine. I
yeah.
don't have experience, but I can only imagine. So
yeah, keeping my head above the water, maintaining Reptifiles in my own animals is literally the most I can do. Any kind of growth right now needs to be put on pause. And you know, it's just a season of life. It's not going to be forever, but that is where I am at the moment. Fortunately, West Liberty's online program is really fantastic, and if you need to take a hiatus and come back, you can.
That's good. Yeah.
So I've taken a couple classes up to this point, and I've loved them. They have already changed the way that I think, and really refined where I'm going with Reptifiles. But yeah, so that's a little bit on pause. Main goal right now is really just expanding the care sheet database, and also giving the care manuals a huge update. There are the older ones, the Crested Gecko care manual being a very good example, need better citations, because back when it was written, it was a far more casual thing, right, and I wasn't paying attention to citations as much as just pulling from decent sources. But now, as Reptifiles is falling under more critical eyes, it needs to grow, it needs to build more trust, and especially where misinformation has just become more and more of a problem, citations are huge. So some of it, you know, is my own philosophy developed as kind of as the product of the research. You can't really cite that very well, but you know, for the core facts, I need to go back and make sure that those are well supported.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And the citations, I'm in the middle of writing my PhD thesis right now. So I'm one of those science people that, you know, is writing, but yeah, the citations are huge playing into that, especially with introduction, right? Where it's like a bunch of background. You can't just say it like you're pulling it out. Cause then also that citation for people who want, it just kind of opens up into like even more information. So it's a way to like easily interthread more info in there with still keeping your original look and plan in the website and making it, you know, easy to.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, is it clutters up the site.
Clutters up.
I want people to be able to, I mean, it's already cluttered. I have, so I fund myself through sponsorships and affiliate links, which is fantastic that I've even been able to get this far that way. And now I've got the Shop Reptifiles online drop shipping store, which is helping. But it's a lot of links. It is a lot of links. If I had my druthers, I wouldn't have them at all. But it is helpful to tell people which products to go to rather than say, oh, just get a UVB bulb, which is what you see in a lot of care books. It's just, you need a desert strength UVB. And then they go and buy some no-name brand off of Amazon that has a very questionable output and might last 2 months.
Right.
And so recommending specific products, it generates revenue for Reptifiles, but it also makes it a much more helpful resource for the people using it, so they know which products to go to that are likely to, you know, last a long time, perform well, or, you know, at worst, not harm their animal.
And I've seen it firsthand helping people because I do consulting on the side. So I almost use it daily when I'm as a vet consulting online with people who have reptiles as pets, and they're coming to me like, what do I need? Or my animal's sick, and oh, there's no UVB on it. And so, it's quick and easy, send that to them, and it's all right there on what they should get, where they should buy. It just makes it so much easier. So in the long term for the health of the animals, I think I've seen it firsthand how beneficial it can be. So
glad to hear it.
Yeah,
mostly, I feel like I'm being so annoying.
No, this is great. We have a lot of like similar kind of background history of 4-H and the writing and the getting into the science of things. So no, it's been fantastic. What kind of challenges did you face kind of when starting out? Kind of touched on a little bit of them, but were there any other ones you could go back and change, or what kind of stuck out with you?
Getting a lot. I mean, so, back when I was in my 20s and energetic and argumentative, I picked a lot of fights online with people in the name of education. And when you talk something out, when you debate with somebody, when they're poking holes in what you're saying, it is a really great way to grow. Teaching is the best way to learn.
Facts.
Flat out.
Yes. Totally agree with that.
And even as an amateur, if you want rapid growth, you teach what you barely know and you build from there. And you are going to make mistakes and people are going to criticize you for it. And you just have to pull your pants up and keep going forward. And there were many times where I realized I was wrong. Many times where I was, preaching something that I realized a year later was incorrect. Picking fights with the wrong people.
Yeah, it's hard, especially online too.
Saying things and then not knowing who they were, what they knew, having that context. That there's a word for it, a certain fallacy, I think. But basically, the less you know, the more you think you know. More confident you are. And I definitely had that. And so I was very active on a lot of forums, Facebook, just everywhere, really. Part of it was SEO for Reptifiles, actually directing traffic to my resource. But that's good. And I've been criticized for that. They're like, you're spamming forums. Yes and no. Everybody does it. And I was just trying to help people in the best way that I knew how. Now I don't have the energy or the time for it. They're like, people want to be wrong. They can be wrong. They'll find me eventually if they care about it enough. But, back when I was starting out, there was a lot of just trying to prove myself. And, that's kind of how you are in your early to mid 20s, is you are gung-ho and you just want to, you have too much energy and you want to change the world. And that's definitely where I was. There have been mistakes. Reptile husbandry wise, of the original 4 animals that I mentioned that I started Reptifiles with, I only have one. One of the bearded dragons died of unknown causes. All I know is that she lost weight quickly, but I thought it was manageable. And then I came back from a trip and she was gone. I was doing everything I could, minus, I don't know why I didn't take her to a vet earlier. That was so dumb.
They hide stuff real easily till it's, by the time you see signs, it's almost like too late. So,
Yeah. And I thought it was a husbandry problem too. Like I was trying to tweak things and like, oh, this is fixable, because a lot of health issues in reptiles can not only be prevented, but also treated with proper husbandry. But I definitely miscalculated there. And it irks me. Other bearded dragon, she crashed hard in a similar way. I did my best I provided better support. That time, I took her to a few vets. They had no idea what was going on. Until finally I get a diagnosis of Oh, it's a big word. Cardiomyopathy.
Oh, interesting.
Basically, you know, her heart was massively oversized.
Yeah.
And she was really struggling there. So we put her on a medication that was my wonderful, wonderful vet. She's like, we have no treatment established for lizards, but there is this one paper about it being treated in alligators.
Okay.
As it goes. So we are going to take that dose and we are going to take a fraction of that dose and give it to her and see if it helps.
Was it like a diuretic or what was it?
I do not remember. It was a long time ago.
It's not really a super common thing in them, but it's interesting. At least
I understand it's genetic. So it may have just been, they were both my bearded dragons were former breeders. So I wonder if that was just a case of a basement breeder, you know, not being very responsible. But, you know, with something like that where it only shows with age, it's kind of hard to breed out.
Yeah. And good luck trying to, you know, peer that on a physical exam. Like they probably heard something. It's probably had to go through so many vets because in dogs and cats,
well, nobody, you know, went through with an ultrasound, right?
Yeah.
For diagnostics until I went to this one vet and they pop out the ultrasound and I'm like, yes, we might get something somewhere now. But it was too late. I did my best to, you know, I was feeding her carnivore care and repashy grub pie, just mixed with and maybe beardy buffet as well, just trying to get calories in her in the best way I knew how. And then one day, shortly after I fed her, she seized, and then she stopped. Like she was breathing really shallowly. I was so shocked. I performed CPR on her and just rushed her, you know, the hour drive to my vet. Like, what can you do?
Nothing.
And she was basically in a comatose state by that point. She was unconscious. And so I had to euthanize her on the spot, and that was so hard. I know vets see it all, but like, man, I embarrassed myself. I'm not really I wasn't a very emotional person. Having kids changes you. Yeah, that was a hard day, but I did ask for an autopsy on her so that one, I could get answers, and two, hopefully the vet could learn something.
Yeah, for sure.
From her body. I'm a very big supporter of ordering necropsies whenever possible, so that the vets can get some hands-on experience just with dissection, getting to know the inside of the animal, how they work, and what common problems might be.
Super helpful.
It helps with closure, man. So that's why I always strongly recommend it. And I'm always interested to hear people's necropsy results. I've had people email them to me just so I can learn from them as well. Yeah, the Doom Rules boa, for all I know, he could be still alive. He was 12 when I had him, so, you know, decent age. He was on the smaller side, 5.5 feet long. His name was Strider. I loved him to death. Oh, I cared for him very poorly. Holy cow. Had a friend who said, oh, you know, like with snakes, you can just put them in a tub with a heat mat and you're good. So I'm like, cool. Will this size of tub work? I've got a heat mat without a thermostat, aspen shavings and a water bowl and like a stick. Not my proudest moment. And, you know, he was great with me, honestly. He, for some reason, did not like my husband. Can't explain it. But we had multiple incidents of him trying to strike and wrap my husband.
Wow.
So there was something about him, despite the fact that there was never any questionable behavior with me, my husband. Like, maybe there's something about his natural scent that beat me. I really don't know what it was, but we had to rehome him, and it was probably for the best ultimately. But the Indonesian blue tongue skink is still with us. He is 9 or 10 now. Yeah, he's doing great. He he bears some of the scars of my, my trial and error as well. But he's great, very handsome. He's in a 12 square foot enclosure, living his best life, more or less. Well, at the moment, not living his best life. We're still adjusting after the move. And
so you guys,
the reptile room is in an unfinished basement. So everybody's in temporary-ish setups. I prefer going bioactive, especially for tropicals.
okay.
And so he's not in a bio anymore. And so it's a little bit more bare bones than I like to do. But, it's functional for now.
Yeah.
And I'm just really happy, actually, that I transitioned him to a toad ranch enclosure with mesh on top rather than the closed top that I had him in before. So it breathes a lot better.
Okay. And then you'll probably just make him bioactive over when you guys get more settled, probably, or?
Yeah, once I have everybody, so I need to get a series of heavy-duty industrial racks or shelves that can handle, because most shelving units can handle about 300 pounds. I'd have to double check the numbers.
300 sounds right.
Per shelf.
Yeah, I've been
looking. And with a large bioactive enclosure, that might not be enough. Like you need something that can handle weight with a capital W. So that's what I'm looking into now. And those are not cheap. So once I get those on casters, just one at a time. And the casters are so I can actually put drywall up in the room because it's only about half walled right now.
Okay. How long ago did you guys move?
Year ago.
Oh, year ago. Okay. It's a time to get.
Yeah. I was really hoping to have things more complete by this point, but boy, can a mortgage eat into your funds. It's work in progress, right? That's for all of us, just doing best to keep things clean and keep the reptiles happy enough while I look around with loathing.
It'll get there. I'll be moving in a few months, so yeah, it'll be quite an adjustment. So.
You have my full commiseration. Moving reptiles is hard.
Yep, thankfully, I mean, I have a decent amount, not crazy like some of my friends do, but it will be, I'm planning. We'll just see how it goes. Trying to plan it in my head and keep things small, as hard as that is right now.
Yeah, disposing of the substrate was heartbreaking. I mean, years worth of established bioactives, very functional, very healthy, and I couldn't move, what may have been a half ton, full ton of dirt.
Yeah.
Like that. I just had to toss it out and assume that I was going to have to. I did bring cultures from each enclosure with me to hopefully, seed the enclosures when I came. And then I just realized it was totally unrealistic for me to set everybody up. Because I was also in my first trimester of pregnancy when we moved. Terrible decision. I was tired. I was nauseous. I was overwhelmed. Doing anything productive? No. Yeah. And honestly, it slowed me down big time for the rest of that year. And then baby was born premature. And yeah. So that's mainly why that's another reason why I haven't gotten anywhere in a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, understandable. So I would definitely give yourself a break there.
That's life. But you're talking about complications. I don't think Reptifiles has had a ton of scandals in its growth, but there was one occasion with it snowed, and I thought, there's precedent for using ice as a form of enrichment for animals in zoos. So I thought, this could be really interesting. I'm going to introduce a small snowball, to my skink to see what he does with it. And this may have been both the northern and the Indonesian blue-tongued skink, or it may have just been him. And he came up to it. He was very interested in it. He is a phenomenal candidate for enrichment experiments because he's very intelligent, very curious, can figure out a puzzle in minutes. And so I thought, he'd probably have a good time with snow. I did not expect him to try to bite it. I thought he would sniff it, you know, some tongue flicks, you know, get a little frosty tongue. It would be okay, you know, nose it around a little. I didn't expect him to try to bite the snowball. And what happened was a pretty typical aversive response, right? He reared back and was just shaking his head like, what? And admittedly, you know, I knew it was not causing him long-term harm. It was just he learned a lesson, we'll say that, about snow and ice, and you know, a novel thing. And I thought it was funny because it was funny. I knew he wasn't harmed. He went right back to it. He nosed it around. He licked it, but he didn't try to bite it again. And it was overall like a positive, enriching experience for him. There was no injury whatsoever to his mouth. You're not going to get injured with a quick bite. And he didn't ingest any. It doesn't affect his core temperature. He was in a very warm tropical enclosure. Right. So conditions were controlled. I made the mistake, however, of posting the video of his reaction without context. Because in my mind, I thought it was just a, haha, this is, you know, a little bit of a funny mishap with enrichment. People lit me up. They called me an animal abuser, told me to go kill myself. Like there was a particular person who really just latched onto this and would not let go. And they released the footage to an internal community. I don't know, a bunch of people who followed him like a cult. And it was after he released it there. And I mean, I took down the video like, okay, this was clearly a mistake. I did my best to, you know, explain, to post the full video. Here's the context. This is what he did after. This is, you know, this is why snow can be safely used as enrichment under, you know, controlled circumstances. And, you know, like this was the thought process. This is what I learned. You know, this is how to do something like this safely. Trying to turn it into a positive teaching moment. And this guy just, there was no forgiveness. He, despite, you know, my best efforts to work with him, he was intent on blowing me up online. And that was an interesting week.
Was it Facebook or like what?
I think the community in question was on Facebook, but most of the messages came through Instagram.
Oh, interesting. Instagram too.
Eventually, I just started exposing these people. I started screenshotting their messages and names and posting them in my stories because I was like, you people are psychos for actually coming into somebody's DMs and telling them to kill themselves.
That's like that's a threat. Like
it is. Yeah.
I mean, that's like, I feel like you could take that to the police and be like, hey, this is like, I would take that as a legitimate threat.
Yeah, like
makes me so worried to post stuff. You know, do YouTube videos. That's you should do YouTube. I'm terrified because of these type of things when people don't really understand the context or you know,
and will just cannot be reasoned with. They're just like somebody I know said that you're a bad person, therefore I'm having a bad day and I'm looking for somebody to attack.
Yep, they have no critical.
Like you got to be careful online, and there are. It was a whole mess. But and it resolved. Unfortunately, my confidence is high enough that it didn't really affect me too much mentally. Aside from just going, okay, I need to be more careful.
Yeah,
moving forward. But I am a lot more careful now with what I post for sure, and that means posting a lot less. And I think that was the beginning of the end for my like super active involvement online. That was just when I took a step back and I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to deal with people like this anymore.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's straining. Yeah. It's emotionally very taxing.
Yeah, so that was the big thing. And by the way, sorry, I'm like flushed and sweaty over here. It's warm in the reptile room.
No, that's okay.
Quite fixed the ventilation. Yeah,
it's okay. No, you're totally good. It's a great episode, learning a lot. So it's interesting to hear the path and the challenges. I mean, that goes in with dealing with animals, and a lot of this is virtual or online. So when you're trying to push your brand, your product online, just have to be really, really, really.
And it's really hard to do without mentors, you know? Like I was mainly doing this alone. I'm very much self-taught. And so you're going to make more mistakes than average when you're self-taught.
For sure. But with you, you know, I think a lot of other people listening to take into this is having the self-reflection and figuring out how to get better. Like that's a lot of people don't have that self-reflective nature, then they'll never get better. They'll never reach where they want to go. So that's a huge thing in itself.
Constant self-evaluation is so key to making progress.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is, I can revise my statement, that I said earlier that teaching is the best way to learn something. It's mindful teaching. It is paying attention to your students and allowing them to give you feedback, paying attention to the way that they're learning as a silent form of feedback. Aside from managing Reptifiles, I also volunteer as an instructor for a historical European martial arts school locally. And I've been doing that for 8 years.
Cool.
For reasons, ended up getting thrown into teaching way earlier than anyone should be thrown into teaching in a martial art.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really a backyard fight club at the time until my husband and I were handed the reins due to the instructor heading out of state for the summer. And we were the only ones reliable enough to hold on to the gear. And if we wanted to practice, we had to host. So we reconnected with a more established club and like, hey, so in theory, you're our mother club, but you guys are a lot more established than we are, and we need to. And they kind of taught us how to get going, and now it stands very much on its own 2 feet very well, and we've learned a ton. But what we talk about all the time is it's one thing to be taught and to be fed the information. It is one thing to teach. But if you are not reflecting on what you've learned and reflecting on what you taught, how well it was received, whether it was effective, you're never going to get anywhere. It's that personal reflection all the time in the back of your head, whenever you have a quiet moment, to just question yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And some people, I think, have that innately, and then some people actually have to write it down so that they remember to do, because it's so important that having the self-awareness to realize how can you refine something or how you can do something better. It's something I deal with every day. It almost creates decision fatigue a little bit, because it's thinking like so very much that you almost can, there's a fine line. If you do it too much, then you can't make progress, depending on how I'm one of those where I'm constantly overthinking, rethinking, and I have to make a decision at some point. So,
Yeah. I've often, when I'm listening to podcast episodes and I hear interviews with, other people in the reptile community and exotic animals, and honestly, just even when you're doom scrolling reels, it's easy to take information that's presented online with a face attached or a human voice and just take it as truth. For some reason, that's how we're wired as humans, is we want to trust another person telling us information.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. Misinformation spreads so fast. And just because somebody is communicating in a friendly and confident manner does not necessarily mean what they're saying is best practice, or even true. 100%. So what I have to do often is, I'm listening and I'll be like, oh, that's a good idea. That's an interesting idea. And then I have to stop and be like, it's interesting. Yes. But should I pursue that? Like, we can file it away for later. We can internalize this, digest it, or we can set it aside and say, no, that was interesting, but I'm not going to assimilate this piece of information. And when you are in a world of information overload, being able to set things aside and to sort is so critical. And then just realize when you've had enough, when you are overwhelmed and you need to take a break.
Yeah. Yeah, it's extra work, right? It's so easy just to take everything at face value. The work comes in actually questioning everything. That's my line of work, right? I'm a scientist. It's second nature to me, but I have to take a step back and realize that that's not people's mindset every day, to try to, not tell them what to do necessarily, but to just question everything. It doesn't mean you're negative Nancy, but at least question in your own mind, is it right for you? Do the research, do the backup. Yes, it's extra work, but depending on what you're talking about, it's very much needed. And we see that a lot in the breeding hobby too. Unfortunately, it's people just kind of taking like podcasting or like taking this platform where it's so easy to give that persona that you know what you're talking about, but you really don't know what you're talking about, and having to do the work and looking at that person's experience and finding they don't have any can be, there's a lot of that in the breeding community that we see with people coming in trying to build, and then maybe not doing it maliciously, but some of the information they're coming with, you're kind of like, like,
well, there's a stereotype, right? Women blog, men start a podcast. And
facts.
It's that seeking validation for your own practices and the way that you think, and it builds a following with people who think like you. And that's just kind of how that ball rolls. And it's very dangerous. It can be very useful, but it can also be very dangerous.
You have to just buck the system, not being like you're just saying no, but reflecting on, like, people have to be able to have a conversation of why they disagree on something and not just block it from the standpoint. Like we were saying earlier, the people attacking you, like, you can reject something, but that doesn't mean you aren't opening to listening to the other person.
So, yeah, I am totally being able to listen to the other person is definitely something I've had to learn over the years. When they're criticizing, I will defend my standpoint, but I'm also very happy to listen to the other person as long as they back up their contradictions. If they can bring strong evidence to the argument, or honestly, even their own personal experience with real anecdotes, it does get taken into consideration. Anecdotes, there's a delightful book by Mark Bekoff called I think The Social Lives of Animals. Or I'd have to double check. The author is Mark Bekoff. It was actually a textbook for my animal behavior and training class. And it's revolutionary. I'm highlighting quotes every other page, I feel like. And a lot of it was, whoa. I spent so much time trying to remember the title, I actually forgot my train of thought. Where were we?
No, that's okay. You talk about a book. I forgot where we were talking about that even too. So intently, shoot. Dang. I don't know where I was. Yeah.
I was talking about.
Anybody in the chat? Put it in there.
Yes, I've got it. So there's a quote that says the plural of anecdote is data. Anecdotes are so important. You get enough of them together to see a trend, and that's actually very important to science. A lot of people, especially in the social dynamics of animals, especially I don't want to say personifying, but treating them as sentient individuals. When you get into that, it's almost pseudoscience. It's so far removed from hard science. It's a soft science that you're not going to find good data in a laboratory. You need anecdotes, and you need a lot of them. And listening to those anecdotes gives you a much better understanding of a whole picture rather than a very isolated, well, under lab conditions, this happened. They expressed this behavior. It's useful, but it's not the whole story.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Yeah, as I've gone through my research, the science is so narrowed focus. So as a vet, my thinking is more clinical, it's more big picture. So I've struggled a little bit on the scientist side because my boss is a PI, right? Very, very so focused on one minute thing, and my brain's like, that's too small. The bigger picture. So it's been frustrating. I ultimately just have to do what my boss wants to do, but the clinician in me struggles with that. So it kind of goes along with, you can be too focused on something and miss the larger picture that could ultimately influence that. So
yeah, what you'll see how context really filters people's perceptions, right?
Yeah.
In veterinary, it's pathology.
Mm-hmm.
Veterinarians see a lot of sick animals, and so they see the trends of, well, I see this factor and I see this factor and I see a sick animal there. And what they commonly do is be like, well, if we want to keep, they forget that correlation is not causation, and they'll miss something with husbandry. So for example, substrate, right? Very common one. Substrate related impaction. They see substrate backed up in the gut of a leopard gecko or a bearded dragon, and the common wisdom was the substrate must be the problem. They're ingesting substrate, so we can stop the impactions by removing the substrate. Yes, that does solve the problem, but it doesn't address the root cause. Why are these animals getting impacted in captivity when they are not getting impacted in the wild?
Interesting.
Yeah, like you can't tell me that there's not going to be some geophagy going on in the wild. And yes, they could die, but are they going to be dying at high rates? Are they, and wouldn't, if they were getting lethal substrate related impaction, they probably wouldn't live long enough to breed.
Yeah.
So what's going on? Is it that our captive populations are so inferior that we've actually affected their gut motility to that point? Are they so fragile? And there is something to that, absolutely.
Microbiome is huge. Yeah, I mean that very much influence. So
when you're breeding for appearance rather than health and function, a lot of things get left behind. And internal physiology is something very difficult to breed for.
Phoenix. Anyways, keep going.
I'm happy. Like, hi there.
Yeah, he likes to listen in. So, anyways,
I love it. So that's a natural weakness of breeding reptiles, right? Is breeding any animal really is when you get too focused on the animal as a picture rather than as a living thing. You start to lose things, and nature does a really, really good job of breeding for functionality.
Yes, yeah, it does. Yeah.
Like making very tough animals, and reptiles are so tough when you give them a chance to. So that in captivity, when suddenly they seem like they're made of glass, something really wrong has happened. And with substrate related impactions, what we found is, yes, loose substrate can cause problems, but also, why are we only seeing it in bearded dragons and leopard geckos? Two species that are commonly kept in really, really dry conditions, to the point of not even having water bowls sometimes. Dehydration can affect gut motility, can cause constipation, substrate impaction. So if they are eating their substrate by accident, it's going to pile up. And it's going to get mixed in with their food, and it's going to make things very difficult to pass. So, we know that dehydration is a factor. We know that UV is a factor. If they are not getting enough vitamin D, that affects gut motility, their ability to pass things in a timely manner, in an effective manner. We know that if they are not adequately heated, these are poikilotherms, cold-blooded animals. They need heat, and they need an appropriate amount of heat, and the preferably right type of heat.
Yeah.
For their bodies to be able to function. They're battery powered.
Yeah, correct.
And if you're not using the right kind of battery, if they're underpowered, then they can't function as well. And that affects all of their systems. And again, you're going to start seeing digestive problems. So that's kind of one example of where a vet can get misled by what they're seeing, but not having the full picture because the other factors are far less visible.
Yeah.
The another example, I just had a vet come to me, or a vet tech. It was a year ago, something like that. very concerned, came to me and she said, you need to stop telling people to, what was it? To use UVB with their blue-tongued skinks. And I thought, well, that's weird. Why would you say that? And she said, I went to a conference where there was a paper that has not been yet published being presented, where northern blue-tongued skinks were showing signs of hypervitaminosis D and they had UVB lights in their enclosure. And I questioned her extensively and I said, can you send me the paper if you have a copy of it? I really want to see this. I haven't heard further on this. It's definitely something I'm keeping in the back of my head. I'm convinced there's something else going on. For example, we do know that with a lot of LED UVBs these days, because they don't have the right amount of UVA in the spectrum, it actually can trigger hypervitaminosis D, where in natural sunlight, this is impossible if all of vitamin D is coming from the animal, is being synthesized by the animal rather than them getting it from their diet, because of that natural shutoff mechanism in the metabolism. But the shutoff mechanism is triggered by UVA, a particular wavelength of UVA. So if there's not enough of that, then according to Francis Baines, that becomes, and I believe Serena Wunderlich was involved in that research as well. So that's a big reason why LED UVBs are currently not safe. Is some people are using them with some success, but it's so risky right now that there's a general moratorium on it. Okay,
because of that, the paper, even though but it hasn't been.
Oh no, not because of that paper, but because of the findings of Dr. Baines and.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
The blue-tongued skink thing, I'm still waiting for more. It's one of those wait and see kind of situations.
Yeah.
Where
it takes a long time. If they find something,
and I need
and all that stuff. Yeah.
I need more context and I need a greater body of evidence, because this still feels like a one-off kind of thing. And without knowing all of the context, it can become very difficult to pinpoint factors. A lot of people, especially in papers, right? They want to show results. Something happened. We fixed a problem. And because papers that say nothing happened, or we're not really sure, more research needs to be done, they're less likely to get published, or they won't get as much attention. People want answers. They want results. They want exciting, which is so funny with science, right?
I'm fighting. It's amazing you say I'm fighting with I'm writing paper right now. I'm fighting with my boss on that, because there's one piece of data where we've done like flow cytometry to look for T cells in the blood, right? We're not seeing them there. She's like, oh, worried that we're not. But in my head, I'm like, that's blood taken at a snapshot in the animal's whole life. It's not even all the blood. It's a small portion of the blood, and she's all freaked out that we're not seeing like the T cells there. And I'm like, it still can be published. It doesn't end like the end game. Like, you know what I mean? But it's so science. You're like, oh, it's not supposed to be biased. Well, it can definitely be biased,
Yeah. That's why you really have to take one-off papers with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Replicability is so important. There is a interesting one that a friend of mine referred to on a common issue in tortoises, pyramiding. And he was like, this person found the solution to pyramiding, how to prevent pyramiding in tortoises. And I'm like, really? That's definitely worth looking into. I haven't heard about this. You'd think there'd be more hype if that were the case. Since, everybody and their dog is trying to solve this problem. So I read the paper. It was an interesting one. I believe they used sulcata tortoise hatchlings for this. And they were controlling for heat exposure and therefore metabolism and their growth rate to see if that would affect pyramiding. So one group was kept, they were heated day and night. The other group was not. All other factors the same, except whether or not nighttime heat was received. So naturally with reptiles, you're going to expect that if the metabolism is kept going at night through heat, they're going to grow faster. And that is what they saw. The group of tortoises that were kept with heat at night, which is often common practice for juvenile reptiles anyway, because they're fragile, they developed more pyramiding than the group that did not receive heat at night. So on the surface, it's like, oh, wow. Okay, so you take away the heat at night and you're not going to see as much pyramiding in a juvenile tortoise. Fantastic. Problem solved. But there's a question to be asking here. The experimental group grew larger and faster than the control group. They were comparing them at the same age. What they should have been doing was compare them at the same size.
Yeah.
Because that's going to show you pyramiding and, you know, how much has happened much more effectively than how fast the pyramiding happened. We want to see if it's happening at all. And you need to wait until they reach the same size, not just the same age.
Right. Because it's so just because they are a size doesn't mean they're that same.
It's a promising theory, absolutely. Or a promising hypothesis, I should say. Slow growth usually is the best way to go with reptiles. I'm a big supporter of grow them slow. It's not what breeders want to hear. It's not profitable at all. You want them to grow quickly and get established quickly so that you don't have to be the one housing and feeding them anymore. I totally understand that, but it is not healthy for most animals to grow fast.
For sure. No, totally. Yep. That's why larger breed dogs, you recommend neutering them when they're larger, right? Because they're in that growth stage and hormones being affected by them. You know, it's bad.
Never mess with hormones. That's one of my core points. It's like, pay attention to the hormones.
Yeah.
Support hormonal health as much as possible with the entire environment. And that's going to give you the healthiest animal possible. If you can support their hormones. And I mean, obviously, that's a trendy topic these days. Everybody's talking about hormones.
Yeah.
But it is
we don't talk about that in reptiles much.
Maybe we're not talking about it in reptiles. We're talking about it in humans a lot.
Mammals, yeah. But I don't feel like we don't talk about it as much on the reptile side. Hormones.
And it's so silly. They have hormones too.
Oh, yeah. Even probably more so because their biology is different, right? I mean, it's eggs, and it's totally different blood supply and all that than us. So it's even more.
Yeah. And they're so dependent on environmental factors to trigger breeding, to trigger estivation, brumation, all of these things. And their internal clocks depend so heavily. I mean, you see the research on amphibians. Amphibians are, what's the term? They're the pulse of the environment. If something's going wrong with the amphibians, you know something's wrong with the environment. They're the first warning sign. And we are seeing frogs in areas with high light pollution doing very poorly because they're not getting that day-night cycle. And so it's just things like that, that aspect of the natural history. It's like natural history can be very confusing. What are the most important factors from the natural history that we can replicate in captivity? Let's not get lost in the weeds of, you know, what exactly are they eating? What exact kind of substrate are they on? And you say, what type of hiding place are they using? What is their lifestyle like? How active are they? You know, how much ground are they covering in a day, in a year? A day is not a very, you don't want to talk about cherry picking your data points. Don't just look at a snake for 45 minutes and say, well, in this 45 minutes, it did not, or it did go, you know, stretch out to its full length. Therefore, these species need an enclosure that allows their full length and these species don't. 45 minutes of observation of a single individual, really?
Yeah. Not a very good sample size there. So
no.
Need to go back on your whatever that is. I had to know a long time ago, some kind of equation or something for sample size, but
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I got asked that in my comprehensive exam. I'm gonna have to look at it for my meeting next week.
Admittedly, I'm not interested in going into formal research. I've taken 4 statistics classes at this point, and like I just clear out every single time afterward.
They're not, it's a bane of my existence. I know what I need to know, and that's it. If it's more complicated, send it out. Anyway,
Yeah.
aside, but
I'm actually thinking about changing my master's from a Master of Science to a Master of Arts, because I'm doing the research could be helpful, but I think if I'm looking to, it would be nice to know how to get formally published, but mostly I want the credentials so that I can work with professional institutions. And I want to increase my own knowledge base. And with a Master of Arts, I get more classes. And granted, you can self-teach, but there's still something to be said for attending the lectures, right?
Right.
Actually taking a class is still so valuable. Doing the homework, communicating with your professor, being supervised.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're not barking up the wrong tree. Whereas with a Master of Science, it's you're doing research and you're being supervised, which is cool if you want to break into that area. But I feel like if I want to go in that direction, that's when I get my PhD. I'd love to do that later in life. But I think for now, I'm starting to lean toward Master of Arts.
Yeah, sounds like a little more wider base, and then if you really want to specialize in something, that's when the PhD would come in. But pigeonholing yourself too early, I think, would be, just looking back at my journey now, don't want to pigeon yourself too much.
And there are things I definitely would love to prove. Like I've got some hunches that need solid proof. I really don't think it's necessary to keep juvenile crested geckos once they've been established. In tiny enclosures. I think that you can stick them into. I think you can stick most juvenile reptiles in an adult-sized enclosure, and they'll be fine. As long as the right resources are provided to them, right? That's the key. And setting up a baby enclosure might look different than setting up an adult enclosure. And the hobby is very much stuck in this idea of grow out enclosures, and you size up with the animal.
Yep.
And that's not very practical for a lot of people. You don't want to be buying multiple enclosures and life support equipment over the lifespan of the animal. This works well for breeders, which is probably why it's gotten so pervasive in the hobby, because you're giving them the minimum amount of space for their size,
right?
And it's extremely efficient. And when you reduce the amount of space that they have, you don't have to outfit them as much. Care becomes a lot simpler. On a scale, it works very well. On the keeper level, however, it's unnecessary and potentially detrimental. My main argument is that it negatively, when you keep juvenile reptiles in a small space for too long, you're affecting their muscle tone and therefore bone density, and their ultimately even their behavioral profile. I've seen this a little bit with my own animals, where my own crested gecko, for example, I did keep him in a 12-18 for a long time, before too long, admittedly. I was working on a custom cabinet conversion, and it did not go fast, as most custom things do go. Rarely do people do these fast. You just kind of chip away at it when you can. He was larger than I would have liked when I moved him over, and what I noticed was for the first several weeks, he struggled to climb higher than 18 to 24 inches. He did not have the muscles to do it. And I thought, this is alarming. A crested gecko should be able to climb more than a couple of feet.
Do you think it was muscle or more of a learned behavior, psychologically, okay, this is how far I can go up. I can't go anymore, even though there's no barrier there. But psychologically, they're used to that.
Maybe there was something.
Barrier. Yeah.
But it took him so long to get to it that, if it was psychological, I would have expected maybe a delay of a week of gradually acclimating to the environment. Yeah. I know that UVB availability was not a factor. His diet didn't change. His lighting didn't change. This was before I started providing UV to nocturnals.
How long did it take?
I didn't document it very well, but it did take over a month, I want to say. And granted, there's always observation bias. I was not there watching him all the time, but I did know that if I placed the food bowl high, he wouldn't eat, but if I did place it low, he would.
Interesting.
So, and honestly, he's been a poor eater his whole life. His body condition's great, but like, he's one of those easy keepers. Yeah. He takes a couple of licks of crested gecko diet and he's good. And I mean, now he's in a 4-foot tall enclosure, uses every inch top to bottom, very confident. And he's got the full outfit of life support equipment. But it was very interesting for me to see that I did observe him at least once falling off the glass. But after that original transition, which was very interesting. Yeah. So it did seem to be a weakness problem. But that's one thing I'd like to prove, would be testing these juveniles kept in smaller enclosures against juveniles kept in larger enclosures to measure their fitness and their ability to use an available space when given the opportunity. And because obviously their muscle tone and how much exercise they're going to get is going to affect how functional their body is long term.
Right. Yeah. Can live longer, have a healthier life. Yeah. Grow. And
they're going to be more active. They're going to be less afraid of large spaces when they're older. They know how to utilize it. They know how to cope in a more open area. I mean, using a much more outgoing species, I have a dwarf boa imperator who has been, even from the time he was a teeny tiny baby who could curl up in the palm of my hand with plenty of room to spare. I stuck him in a 4x2 enclosure, and with adequate hiding places, he was fine, totally fine. He's got amazing muscle tone, can do a lot, and even now, he's a small snake, so he's in a 4.24 now. He can go anywhere he wants. He'd take the whole room if he could.
Yeah,
he's just and obviously a boa is a very different animal from a crested gecko in many ways.
Just a little bit.
But he's sedentary is not the word for him in any way, whereas a lot of crested geckos are described as sedentary.
Right. It just shows that there's so much more that we don't know, and that we could, if we just question things a little bit, or like, I would say poke the bear, but poke the ball, like try to uplift the ceiling. Maybe it's a glass ceiling what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That you can kind of push through that on what's been traditionally the way to do. And I think, and maybe you've seen that over the course of your research and learning, there has been positive changes, but I feel like so much more that we could learn about or do, maybe.
Oh, there absolutely. I mean, the hobby has progressed so much, and even the last 5 years, it has changed for the better in so many ways, and I love seeing it. It's another one of my core philosophies that has developed is whenever you can give the animal a chance to express more behavior, to show you more of itself, and to choose how it wants to spend its day, give it the opportunity. Let it do it. Because reptiles, at the end of the day, the definition of domesticated is very much up in the air, right? But domesticated or no, reptiles are so good at taking care of themselves when you give them the resources to do it. My thought is give them the resources. Let them take care of themselves. Feed them, water them, keep the right environmental parameters. Let them do the rest. We're not taking them out for walks. Yeah. We're not monitoring their, if it were possible, let them forage for their own food. Give them choices, that's obviously not sustainable for most reptile keepers. I'd say 99.9%. Let them choose. And their instincts lead them in the way that's usually healthy for them. Obviously, we can train them into unhealthy habits. It happens all the time. You have bearded dragons who won't touch their greens, which, granted, that's often an overfeeding related anyway.
Aquatic turtles, I've seen that. They won't eat the greens. That's the most common thing I see, yeah.
Yeah. The I mean, when you have tastier food options available your whole life, you don't want to eat vegetables.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things too of like you've got to pressure them a little bit.
Mm.
And a lot of people want to spoil their animals rotten, which is great. We show affection often through food. It's one of the few ways with a reptile that you can try to bond with it, aside from very intentional handling or enrichment. And that's harder. But giving an animal a treat is a very easy way to bond with an animal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do it all the time. We notice that they have favorite foods. We want to give them their favorite foods all the time. And suddenly we become, grandma bringing over a bag of candy every day. And the parents are like, you're ruining my kids.
100%. Yep. I had ice cream for breakfast at my grandma's house consistently. So that was a thing.
There you go. Right?
Yep.
It's how you buy the love.
Yep. Yep. For sure.
Is it good for you? No. And it's one thing when it's an every once in a while thing, but when it becomes a daily thing, then it's, not just ice cream for breakfast at grandma's, it's ice cream for breakfast every day before school.
Yeah. And then you get less diabetes, reptiles mostly see gout or kidney issue because the protein, too much protein. Oh, when we're talking diet stuff, but yeah.
Gout is such an interesting thing to me right now, actually. I'd love to talk to you about this.
I don't know if I know much about it, but you can shoot.
Well, I'd love to get your thoughts because gout runs in my husband's family.
Oh,
and so he recently had a flare up. And he's young for gout. You think of gout as like this more elderly, middle-age complaint. And he's in his 30s. Like, you don't really think of a guy in his 30s getting gout.
Right.
But turns out he had a flare up and he got diagnosed by a podiatrist of all people. And they took the blood sample and they're like, yep, you are not filtering your uric acid very well. And you've got tons in your blood. So we need to make some lifestyle changes, which is a good thing, right? But I've been doing a lot of, before this point, I've been only familiar with gout through reptiles and the association with protein levels, uric acid levels in feeders, especially roaches. But now I'm looking at the other environmental factors that are associated with gout in humans and wondering how much of it applies to reptiles because there's not a lot of information on health and exotics, reptiles included, and where you can't, vertebrates have many similarities in their physiology. Obviously, you can't pull everything, and there are adaptations, but if you're looking for answers, there are many things, even in human medicine, that can at least give us an idea of something we might want to look at closer in reptiles. One of the things, Dr. Baines is a very, very well-respected reptile lighting scientist, and she gets a lot of inspiration from human studies
Interesting.
about the way that vitamin D3 gets synthesized in invertebrates, and then she. It's like, okay, well, let's look at other vertebrates that aren't humans. Let's look at invertebrates, and connecting dots to see, okay, what is the most likely picture we can get for what's going on with reptiles?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so
comparative in us is very similar. So makes sense.
Yeah. So you just have to be very careful when you're getting into that area, right? But it's always good for food for thought. So this is where I'm coming from. Is seeing the associations in human gout with dehydration, with a sedentary lifestyle. You see both of these. Obviously dehydration is going to affect kidney health, and where there's kidney struggling, you're going to see kidney-related problems like gout and high uric acid levels, difficulty functioning. So, bearded dragons are manifesting with a lot of gout. Common problem with bearded dragons? Dehydration. Could it also be genetic? Yes.
100%.
If we're breeding bearded dragons that are predisposed to gout, you're going to see babies with gout, and we have seen baby bearded dragons with gout, which is insane.
I think it's definitely
and
genetic.
the four things. You see, you see that it's more of a problem in sedentary animals. Well, gee, a lot of our reptiles in captivity are pretty dang sedentary due to a lack of enclosure size, not enough space to begin with in their home turf. B, they don't have enough enrichment. They're not getting out of their enclosure enough to move, to circulate, to push blood to the extremities. Is that a factor? Something worth considering. One of the treatments that my husband was given by the podiatrist to help resolve the gout flare-up was make sure your feet are warm at night. He gets hot, and he likes to stick his feet out of the covers to stay cool. It was his feet that had the flare-up. He started keeping his feet warmer at night, and that helped clear up the crystals. And often I've found in bearded dragon communities, if a bearded dragon has gout, people are like, oh no, there's nothing we can do. It's going to be in pain its whole life. You know, these crystals won't go away. We should be encouraging them to go back into the system so the animal can move normally. I'm not seeing as much of that. It's just like, just assuming it's a pronunciation of doom on the animal rather than what can we do to help it become functional again? How do we manage this? Not just, well, throw up our hands and give up and say, well, okay, we're going to give it tart cherry extract and hope for the best.
I think Ursodiol, I don't know, that just popped up in mind. That might be something they give them too.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, and the medications work great. They can do a lot, but it's these lifestyle things, these environmental factors that have me questioning. It's like, gee, struggling to circulate to the extremities when we're only using one relatively small heat lamp for a much larger animal. I mean, you're talking a 5.5-inch dome lamp for a 22, 24-inch long bearded dragon. They're not getting heat to the tail. They're not getting a lot of heat to the toes.
Right.
In the wild, they're built to be heated evenly. Their entire body gets heat all at once. It's very effective circulation. And we see problems with circulation issues in tail necrosis. That's a very common one.
Yep.
Associated with poor circulation. We see, why one of the reasons why heat rocks are so dangerous is poor circulation. Cool air temperatures, warm rock. Reptiles is not hitting the body temperature that it needs to get off the rock. And so they get burnt because the circulation is not there. And it's all of these factors. This is kind of a insight in what's going into my head when I'm taking in information, is trying to connect dots and be like, maybe I might tweak my recommendations to, just not say this prevents anything, not say this treats anything, but maybe we should be paying attention a little bit more to these factors to create this holistic view of how do we keep these animals as healthy and happy as possible.
Right. No, it's very, very, circulation, I would think. So would putting a heat mat help keeping them warmer, those toes extremities would be in.
It might help the toes, especially when people are using, say, a hammock for a basking surface instead of something that actually absorbs heat, like a plank of wood. Even will do better, or a light-colored rock. Substrate. Just dirt and sand absorb a ton of heat. Put the heat lamp over that. The substrate will be warmer. It will soak into the underside of the animal, so it's receiving heat from below as well as above. It's going to be warmed total much faster and much more effectively than if it's on a porous surface like a hammock.
Right.
And then people are like, well, if we make the basking spot bigger, then we overheat the entire enclosure. And I'm like, that's probably a red flag. If we're providing a basking spot large enough for the animal to be heated evenly and suddenly the entire enclosure is overheating, we can't achieve a temperature gradient, maybe the enclosures need to be bigger. Maybe they need to be ventilating better.
Basking spot, it's so hard to make it evenly. Like it's like 1/4 is size is what you want your temp to be, and it can cause burns too, because it's so focused on one small area, even though you temp gun it and it
Oh, we're talking about
area.
like equipment recommendations.
Yeah.
Different bulbs have very different spreads of heat. Some of them are so focused and other of them are much more even.
Okay.
And you want to get the even ones, right? That's why a flood bulb is often going to be better than a spot bulb. Not always, though. I love a standard incandescent. Those things heat so evenly. If you don't need a ton of heat, get a standard incandescent. That's what I use for my viper geckos, my crested gecko, my morning geckos. They have very mild, evenly spread heat. It's beautiful. But for larger heat requirements, multiple bulbs, a cluster of that can cause problems. But you don't want a radiant heat panel either because it doesn't produce infrared A. And infrared A is the most important wavelength when you're talking about a cold-blooded animal because that penetrates deeply into tissues. I mean, it has therapeutic purposes, for crying out loud. You get that from light bulbs. You cannot get that from a heat pad, a heat panel, a ceramic heat emitter, a deep heat projector. If there's no light, there's no infrared A because it's the closest to the visible spectrum. And unfortunately, that creates a pretty narrow range for a basking spot. So you either create a cluster and then you get these like weird potentials for hot spots and overlap between the bulbs. And it gets very complicated, especially if you're not looking at it with a thermal imaging camera. I have one. It's a really fun tool. Most people are not going to have one of those in their bedroom. But it is a really great way to visualize the temperature gradient in an enclosure if you ever want a new toy to play with.
Sounds like it could be and you
can use it to look at drafts in your house. Multi-purpose. But for larger, there's a Reptile Systems gold infrared heater that's very interesting. It looks like it's a tube style bulb. I don't know what kind of bulb it is. I'm not an engineer. But all I know is that this thing, at first I thought it was the crappiest heater ever. My first exposure to it was when I participated in the snake discovery build off. And I'm like, oh, I've been meaning to play with this. And I turn it on and I see blood red light coming from this thing. And I'm like, it's a red heat lamp. Are you kidding me? And it's barely producing any heat. I'm out. This is a horrible, horrible heater. And then I learned more about it from Thomas Griffiths, Roman Murin. I can't remember who talked more about the fact that these are producing. I also talked to a rep from Reptile Systems, happened to run into him at a Dale at Super Zoo. And that was a very fun conversation about learning about how this was developed and getting more information on the spectrum. That blood red color is super dim, but the blood red is actually, it's the infrared A. It's what the human eye can perceive of it. And so this thing actually has an incredibly high output of infrared A, making it an unbelievably effective heater. It might not be very hot temperature-wise, but it's producing lots of the radiation. And that's the crazy thing. Okay, this is the newest and the hottest thing in reptile husbandry research right now, is shifting the focus from temperature-based focused heating to infrared, so radiation-focused heating, where you're looking at the quantity of the infrared A that the animal is receiving in its basking area, not just the temperature, because the temperature is what we feel as a result of receiving infrared. And that's probably a very poor way. I'm sure Roman would pull me apart in a million directions, but I'm still wrapping my head around it.
It's not giving you the full picture of
the
type of light that is important. Yeah, our minds are just focused on that little number, not
what we can perceive. Admittedly, it's a lot more complicated when you have to buy another meter. It's hard enough telling people to buy a solar meter, and then you say you have to go buy a infrared a spectrometer tuned to infrared A. And you need to be measuring that in your basking area, and you want it to be between about 250 and 350 in the basking area, according to observations of the amount of available infrared A at the times of day when reptiles are basking, because it changes over the course of a day. And that's the number, is in I want to say nanometers per meter squared, or is the measurement.
Oh, I think I lost your audio. Yeah, I can't hear you. Nope. Can you guys hear me in the chat? Can you hear us? I mean, you can hear me, but now I can't hear you. For those in the chat. Yeah, I don't know. Strange. It doesn't show you're muted. Yeah, those in the chat, can you hear her? Check, check, check. I mean, it looks like my mic. Okay, yeah, so they can hear me. Yeah, they can't hear you. Maybe leave and come back. Yeah, that may help it. Yeah. Cool. Awesome episode, guys. This is just, I know it's real nerdy. It's real nerdy talk, but I hope you guys are getting something out of it. Oh, there she is again. Okay. No, I cannot. Dang, I don't know what happened. Yeah, and if you guys cannot hear me, just put it in the chat so that I know. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, you're good. Okay, see if she can fix it. Hopefully, maybe we can also wrap things up. It's kind of making me think about lighting now. I can hear you, Chris. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think something's wrong with her audio. It just like cut out all of a sudden. I'm not sure what happened. There was like a little bit where it got kind of like flickering and then went off. So, okay, at least you guys can hear me. I don't think it's on. We had an issue backstage, but we fixed it very quickly. She left and come back and she was able to hear me. I could hear her though. So I've not had any issue here. You gotta love technology. Yeah. So you gotta play with. Hopefully this is good. If you guys have questions, put in the chat. Kind of finish up what we were talking about. And then I kind of want to show like what the Reptifiles looks like. I think I'm gonna like attach it to my link tree, so when I sell those species, they'll have like a care guide, because it's a very excellent care guide. It gives the actual products they should buy, and super helpful to make things easy with everything in one place: diet, husbandry, temperature, humidity, all of that stuff in one place. So I do want to share my screen and show that side of it. I'll wait till she comes back, because if I share the screen, then I can't like see if she's joined or not. But yeah, thanks for sticking around, guys. Appreciate that. I can see Phoenix. My little orange pretty good. Hey, this is a good time to play some commercials. How about that? One
of the biggest growths we have in the reptile industry today are the rare species of reptiles that aren't worked with. That's right. That's why I went ahead and partnered up again with Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. Brian works with species such as kahua geckos, gargoyle geckos, all species of tree monitors. He works with abronia and many other cool species geckos that you can check out all on his website. Head over to sundownreptiles.com, see what he has available. Brian's one of the best doing it in the reptile industry today. He's been on the show multiple times, so make sure you check out all of Brian Susan's episodes on Trap Talk Reptile Network. But more importantly, for the highest quality of captive bred reptiles, make sure you head over to sundownreptiles.com and make sure you give him a follow on Instagram. Thank you again, Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. One of the things I love about being a part of the reptile industry is all the learning, okay? Learning can be fun, and I can prove that to you. Thank you so much to today's sponsor, it's Gary Scavino over at gs.reptiles. I highly recommend you head over to his YouTube channel, follow all this man's content when it comes to learning about rare species of snakes you could be keeping in the hobby, and also just finding out how easy a lot of these rare species of snakes are to keep in general. So thank you so much, Gary Scavino of GS Reptiles. Again, head over to his YouTube channel. Also head over to his Instagram to be on top of all of his current work and be ready for a big year over at GS Reptiles. Thank you so much, Gary, for your ongoing support. I really appreciate it. Chee!
Okay. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Woo! Perfect.
The good old reboot.
No, that's okay. I was like, hey, perfect time to play these commercials I sometimes forget to play, but I have to play. So it was good timing for that.
It's meant to be.
And those in the chat have been enjoying it. So yeah, we're definitely, I don't know where else you want to go after that. We're definitely past the however time I usually spend. So I know you had a family stuff to do. I wanted to kind of show the site. So I might share my screen and maybe you can, because I think I was telling people before this, it'd be super helpful because, I send it to people I talk to, but for breeders to like have this at shows or attach it to their link tree that we can send or buying our animals to as a guide. That's what I'm so I think it'd be very helpful. Let me present it.
Yeah, Reptifiles is, so every care sheet has a PDF version that can be downloaded and printed. I have it fully watermarked, so it can't really be stolen. But I want to make life easier for breeders, for pet stores, for rescuers, to make sure that the people who are taking their animals home have information in their hand. It's a simplified version of, especially the care manuals, but also of the care sheets, which are longer on the site itself. But I keep it to about 4 pages. So you print it out. It's 2 pages front and back. And it is the bare bones what people need to know when they are bringing these animals home. And so those are printables that anybody is welcome to use. I get people asking me all the time, bless their hearts for being so polite, but they're like, oh, can I please use your care sheets? And I'm like, yes, please. I will shove it down your throat.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just assumed. So I was like, oh, if we can't, but I feel,
vets are using them. Breeders are like everybody possible is using them. My local reptile expo, I hand them out for the most commonly sold species.
Cool. And where are those printouts kind of looking? Or so these care sheets are those two? I'll just click on the ball python one.
So that the ball python one, that link will take you directly to the PDF because I have a care manual on that species, and I want people paying attention to the care manual first. The whole information. But if you go back and say click on I don't know, rainbow boa. Ooh, that might be a bad example. I've been told I need to update that one. Sand boa would be a good example.
Sand boa in the care sheet or the manual?
Care sheets. So go to snake care sheets and there's a list. Find Kenyan sand boa.
Kenyan sand. Oh, yep. Okay.
And that will take you to the web page, but then there's a link at the top to the PDF.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's the puzzle.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And that's how all of them work for now. The site is in the middle of being restructured. That's actually one of the reasons why I haven't been updating for the last, it honestly might be 2 years by now. My partner has been very generously rebuilding Reptifiles for me to help it perform faster and to make it more user-friendly. It's a work in progress. This has been something that they've been very much doing practically pro bono, and there have been many distractions and complications along the way. So the format will change at some point in the future. I'll try to warn people before it goes live. We're reviewing it all the time, and I'm like, we need to fix this and this and this and this. And honestly, there's a chance that maybe nothing will change. I'm very attached to WordPress and my Elementor plugin. Is it the fastest? No. There's a lot of junk code, but it's been effective. It's been very helpful for me as an amateur using it. And it makes things easy to update. So we'll see. But right now, that is I'm just checking the comments now that I know where to find them.
Is there any people?
That's how to navigate the site right now. Is I've got a list of the care manuals, the basically ebook length resources on the homepage, and then the care sheets are sorted by snakes, lizards, and turtles/tortoises. It drives me nuts when people get pedantic about turtles versus tortoises. They're all turtles.
Chelonian.
Chelonians! Let's just use that term and everybody's happy. It just makes you sound pretentious, but whatever.
Yes.
So there's that. I'm always very open to feedback. I want people messaging me saying, you know, this worked, this didn't work. I'm concerned about this. I'm always working with people on whether they may have implemented something wrong and I need to clarify my language, or maybe I genuinely looked at the wrong resource, made the wrong connection. One weakness I have with these is that sometimes I make them without, often as I'm branching out, I haven't kept these species personally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing my best to make educated guesses based on using the right resources and preferably getting an experienced keepers, if not their secondhand knowledge in there. Like, from the research, ideally, I want them looking at it. Mm-hmm. I want somebody doing a proof. Right now, I'm working on a Peter's banded skink care sheet with a lot of input from somebody who's actually very experienced with them. So I'm hoping it'll be good, but I've heard that there are some weaknesses, and I'm just doing my best to sort through the information that I have and work with. I know the reticulated python care sheet. When it comes to animals that are kept in such a, they're kept very differently from keeper to keeper.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been working with Garrett from Reach Out Reptiles on it, talking to him about it, and the main sticking point is the feeding schedule, actually, and feeding schedules, man. Beginners need a feeding schedule, but once you get more experience with reptiles, it's just kind of it's almost like you feel it out. You're like, I feel like the animal's hungry and we should feed them now.
Yeah. Well, it's so individual.
They're looking a little skinny. They're looking a little fat. We need to adjust. And it becomes very individualized, and a feeding schedule kind of goes out the window and just becomes very tailored.
Yeah.
So trying to provide something that provides a safe starting point that's not going to promote obesity or anorexia is difficult.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
But that's the site. If anybody wants to, if you're open with it, I think we've both, you said we've gone longer than expected. I'm happy to do a quick Q&A. I love answering questions. It's one of my favorite parts of volunteering at Reptile Expos is just being face-to-face with people, getting questions, giving answers, helping people. I don't like YouTube, but I do like interacting with people.
Yeah, we'll open up. Yeah, it's always, I go as long as the guest wants to go. I just don't want to hold them to.
Hit me, guys.
But sure, yeah, we'll have some Q&A. Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes episodes they're good on the questions. Other days they're quiet. I think one question Marcus is over in Sweden. He had a question on the book that you were talking about. Who was the author of that again?
MARC Bekoff, MARCBEKOFF.
Okay. Yeah. You said, what was his name? Yeah. So we had that one. Jordan's big into retext too. So he kind of came in later, so he may have missed the initial conversation. But that's
Reptifiles has been up for I can't remember exactly when it turned into reptifiles.com and I actually started hitting it hard. I want to say it's been 7 or 8 years at this point.
Okay.
A while.
Like you said, 7 8.
I've been doing it as my essentially part-time occupation with no other distractions aside from children. For about 5 years now, since COVID.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure it really boomed during that time?
Yeah,
too?
I actually had a freelance gig. So I got laid off during COVID, and I had a freelance gig that I picked up for Dubia.com. Actually, I was freelancing for Darian Drollinger for a couple of years.
Shout out to Darian.
Yeah, and he was great to work with. One of the most understanding people, and we had many a lively debate on things that he would like clarification on. So the care sheets were I ghost wrote those care sheets. They're not perfect due to the time constraints, but there's a huge variety, and now I have a reference for a starting point essentially for future care sheets. But if you have questions about something that isn't listed on Reptifiles, the Reptile Supply and Dubia.com Reptile care sheets were written by me. I just can't make guarantees. They might be a little outdated.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because you normally have
I don't have access to them, and
update them.
I was turning them out without a lot of supervision from actual keepers.
Okay. Well, good to know.
Educated guesses would be a good way to put those.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know that. Yeah, it's okay, Jordan. This is on replay, so you can always go back and listen to it. I guess one question I had too was I think you said one species, but what are new species you're looking at adding to in the nearish future?
Oh gosh. Really hard to say because honestly, 2 young children means I am frankly overwhelmed with the animals that I have. The idea of adding more to the reptile room is daunting. Right now, I just want to get everybody taken care of. I'm doing a product review for Zen Habitats, expanding my on their new 3.0 enclosure. I just want to expand and refine everybody's enclosures at this point. So the ball python's going from a 422 to a 424. Man, she's so much. She and my boa are actually roughly the same length, but she's so much thicker than him. And the contrast between them, and I see her in this 422 that's considered like the minimum for a ball python. And I'm like, you are too big for this enclosure. So I'm very eager to get her into something bigger to see how she goes. She will climb when given the opportunity. I've seen it. I actually saw it after I moved, and she was in a large temporary enclosure. I was like, oh, this is a new behavior. What are you doing, girl? And it just proved what I had suspected. That given the opportunity, she will take it. She really liked it. Was a crappy enclosure for the moment. She was hiding on top of a very poorly mounted, internally mounted UVB fixture. And she thought that was the greatest thing to hang out on because it was warm. She used it as a shelf right up next to the ceiling, just wedged herself in there and happier than a clam. If I were to add a species, I'm going to, I guess the next project actually is something controversial. I want to experiment with the ditherfish idea. So, in the aquarium hobby, it's very common to cohabit. And you have like your central species, and then you have the other species that might be smaller to just kind of fill up the space. And they cohabit fine, even when they're not from the same area of the world. If they have similar requirements, they get along fine. And I'm like, cohabitation is such a touchy issue in the reptile hobby, right? We don't want conflict.
Yeah.
But the more I hear from, and granted, this is advanced keeping. This is, as an experienced reptile keeper speaking here, I would like to experiment with introducing ditherfish species to some of my larger enclosures as a form of, one, keeping more species in the same amount of space, doing what fish keepers do, but also so that they can provide enrichment for each other. So kind of like adding a sibling, they entertain each other. I want to, my boa enclosure definitely has room for it. I want to introduce potentially emerald tree skinks, which is a species I have a lot of interest in. I think they're very fun. Yeah, I like skinks in general. If it's a skink, I'm probably a little obsessed with it. Skinks are great. I would like to try introducing a trio of emerald tree skinks to his enclosure to see how things go. They might be a little too large to be an effective to other species. Boas are known to, the smaller ones are known to eat lizards. So I'm going to take that risk. I'm going to see if he sees them as prey or if they just kind of fade into the background if, you know, he's adequately fed.
Yeah.
And we'll see if they don't work out, I'd probably do some type of miniature day gecko. I really like the gold dusts.
Those are pretty. I like the electric blues are probably my favorite.
Yes.
I would like to get some of those someday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really pretty.
I mean, with day geckos, it's hard to go wrong. They're all amazing.
Yeah, the giant day ones, the gold dusted. Yeah, they're all
I'm generally more like I lean toward nature's look, the natural non-morph animals. But I will say I got a thing for them crimson day geckos, man.
They're pretty. I really like. Yeah, if they could be like handled, they would. I think by far be like the most popular geckos, like a pet. If you were able to handle
They're
them.
beautiful. It's like the red line of brown anoles.
Yeah,
you get that pop of color, and everybody's like, "Woo!" I mean, I'm like that with okay, probably in the future, admittedly, probably a red monster bearded dragon. My husband has been pining for a bearded dragon ever since we've lost ours. He's very fond of them. He wants a big jeans male. Like we're talking 24 inches of stocky solid male.
Yeah.
The biggest bearded, like one of the biggest bearded dragons you've ever seen. He wants them big jeans and I want it red.
Okay.
So if we can find one of those,
that's reputably bred, because I've heard a lot of those are inbred too. Those monster
the
ones.
inbreeding is terrible with them. I just listened to an interview on the Animals at Home podcast about it. That for every healthy one you see, they have a lot of siblings that had to be culled because the genetics are not great. So the ones that you see in the pet stores, the ones that you see in the pet trade, might be healthy. But it's behind the scenes that what you're not seeing is the genetics are iffy. So if I could find one from a breeder that I'm comfortable with, because obviously, you know, we're just trying to make the morph healthier. That's what a lot of these guys are trying to do is how can we, but from what I'm hearing so far, the only way to get that super red color is to inbreed. But I've also heard that, you know, inbreeding is not evil. It's bad inbreeding. That's the problem. Inbreeding can be used to make incredibly healthy animals. It can refine and really bring out the best. But a lot of people do it very irresponsibly.
Yeah, there's a
fine
line and a correct way to do it. It takes a lot of researching and looking into it to do it the correct way.
Yeah, and a lot of people, unfortunately, are not willing to put in that effort.
Yeah, too hard. It's easy just to slap them together and they do.
Oh gosh! Oh, mistakes, man! What mistakes have I made? Accidentally breeding ocellated skinks.
What's oscillate? Is that a specific type of skink?
Yeah, Chalcedonius ocellatus. They are a Mediterranean fossorial skink. They're about 8 inches long. They're delightful. But like most skinks, very difficult to sex visually. Basically not impossible, actually. So they caught my eye at the local reptile pet store, and I thought they were great. I was like, look at their little legs. They got like legs. And I thought and I saw them as babies, and they were in the pet store for like a year. And I just watched them grow up, and I'm like, nobody's buying these. Okay, I gotta. Because with miniature species, it's so much easier to justify it. Because they're little.
Yeah.
That's what happened with the viper geckos too. Total impulse buy. Saw something that has very little information on it on the internet, and they were wonderful. They were unique. They were at a Josh's Frogs booth at the expo, and I
snatched them up. Josh's Frog. I mean, they're pretty. I find they're
the main breeder of viper geckos now. They were super popular apparently like 20 years ago. And they've lost popularity for no good reason. I think in many ways, viper geckos are an ideal little display animal. Even pet, they really don't mind handling that much once they're established. They're very slow movers. Now, how much of that is like a freeze response? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah,
but they're chill. They are really chill, and it's like having a 4-inch long leopard gecko that can cohabit. The males do not conflict.
Wow.
When there's not females around. But I have a trio of males out of just dumb luck. And yeah, I have never seen conflict with them.
Interesting. Cool. I'll have to look those up. I like the gecko. I like the cave geckos. I want to oriental. These. That may be my next. Probably not this year. Probably next year. But
yeah, if I can shout out friend of mine, Joey Mugelston, is a breeder of many. He's a phenomenal breeder. And I am blanking on his freaking business name. Why do I do
this? Is it Cave Kids?
No.
I follow him, and I kind of want to ask if he'll come on the show because
I wonder if I can look this up real quick. No, I don't think I can. But if you look up Joey Mugelston Reptiles, it should come up.
Okay.
But he GBS Serpentarium. That's it.
Oh, geez.
Wait a second.
GBS.
Or GB Serpentarium. He breeds a lot of different species. Just a really, really phenomenal breeder. He's just expanding his facility too. He has been successful breeding some species that like very few people have been able to breed. And he teaches herpetology, or he used to teach herpetology locally at a local university. Great guy.
Yeah, I'm looking at his page now. Yeah. Cool.
But I'd recommend a cave gecko from him. You get a good one. You get good animals from him, period. One, I have a northern blue tongue skink from him, actually.
Okay.
So viper geckos are they're one of my newest obsessions. But the ocellated skinks, they're where I made the mistake. I got a group, and I thought, well, we can't sex them now, but I've got time. They're not, according to my extensive research, they don't reach physical maturity until about 2 years old. I know they're not 2 years old. When I see signs of physical maturity, I'll split, and I'll just watch them like a hawk. Well, see, there's a margin of forgiveness, you could say, with egg laying reptiles. If accidents happen, you can dispose of the eggs after they're laid. Right. You can. It's not palatable, but that's the facts. With live bearers, you can't do that. And ocellated skinks, like every other skink, are live bearers.
So you just found a bunch of babies in there one day.
So yep, I just found babies. And I was like, you weren't supposed to be able to do this yet.
Hey, if the opportunity's there.
Everybody I talked to, every source I looked at lied.
Yeah.
Like they weren't supposed to be physically mature yet.
Probably hormonal influence, like we were talking about earlier. Maybe together, like the pheromones. Wouldn't be surprised if that could speed.
Maybe with the heating and lighting setup I had them on, I don't know. Maybe it was because they hadn't been cooled for the winter, and that like if they cool for winter, then that's going to slow things down. But without it, it accelerates. I mean, they're Mediterranean, so they don't get a ton of winter cooling, but they do get a cooler season. So I ended up with babies, and I thought, I have time. I can separate them out. Like, this will not be a problem. And I still underestimated them. I got a freaking third generation. Wow. It is a debacle, to put it mildly. How do I put this? It was an excellent study in a very casual, one-off study on social dynamics in Chalcides ocellatus in a confined space, as well as rate of sexual maturity with under consistent conditions. So they would be an almost perfect pet, except for the sexing problem. They can get along in a group. I have a group of 6 guaranteed females now. I was able to distill. I was able to offload the babies. Actually, some of my, it was 1 male and 2 or 3 females I offloaded actually to the lab at West Liberty University. So they're off doing their thing. They are a phenomenal research species because they're actually placental. There's tons. This is what bugs me so much. There's tons of research on Chalcides ocellatus and their reproduction because they're placental. Lots of interest in their physiology. They're small. They make great lab animals. There is nothing on visually sexing them.
Wow.
And I'm
That's
like,
surprising.
how are these labs sexing them?
Yeah.
Is everybody just doing this by luck? Like, there's got to be something in the notes, in the methodology about males are this, females are that. Nothing.
Wow. That's
like, if I had the funds, I would put a bulletin out there and be like, hey, students, you want to do a study on how to sex these guys visually? I will give you the money.
We'll do it. Students will do anything for money.
It peeves me to no end. There's so much research on their reproductive physiology and not a thing on sexing them.
That just shows you how so focused it can be that you miss the bigger picture.
And it's like, I call it neglectful methodology. When they're not thorough enough in the methodology section, I'm like, we need these details.
Yeah. I'll probably say that when I send my paper to her. I need to be more detailed on the methods.
But yeah, it was really funny. My pardon my language here, but once I had everybody separated, the one male who was left, the males will fight, and they will fight badly. That was one of the things I learned. His enclosure was called Horny Jail.
I can't understand why.
Can't understand why. It's just a random name. But yeah, and that was like a 2-year period of insanity.
Yeah.
Just the oscillated skink debacle. So now everything's under control. I have 6 and a 4x2x2, and they're doing pretty well. They have a pecking order for sure, and they have mild conflicts, but I don't know if I can say for sure that they do better when housed solo.
I'm looking up them now, just pictures. Yeah, like little longer, like golden kind of guys.
Yeah.
I can share it real quick if it'll let me.
Yeah, and they're really gregarious. They're not that afraid of people. I mean, it does depend on individual personality. Most of so 5 of the 6 are pretty comfortable around humans. They'll come up to me for food. They'll notice when I'm around. If they're hungry, they'll come up hoping for a treat. But there is one of the 6. She's the largest female, and she's very, very timid. She sees me and she runs. Even after years, I can't bribe her. So it's individual personality, what it comes down to. That's why you can never make, you can't guarantee generalizations on disposition, right? But generally speaking, oscillated skinks, they're skinks. They're bold. They're smart. They can be trained. They will come take a mealworm out of your palm. I do say they're smart, but their vision's not great. They will bite your finger. It feels like a pinch.
Yeah.
They're not big. It's a hard pinch. It's startling, but that's it. So I usually just wear gloves. It's higher contrast anyway. Mealworms are kind of flesh toned, so they have a hard time seeing on my palm. But if I have a wiggly mealworm on a black glove, they're a little more likely to get it right.
Very cool. I just looked them up. Yeah, look into that. That's funny though on all the sexing them and
so keeping them in a group is risky because of the sexing issue. Otherwise, you can totally keep them in a group. Yeah, if they're female.
Yeah, which nobody really knows. Maybe in the future, maybe it'd be like I don't know if you could probe those guys. They're so small.
No, they're so small.
Yeah,
and no one's going to use contrast radiography on a 6-inch skink.
Well, shed testing is I mean, that might be a stupid question, but they do shed, right?
Yeah, they shed like other reptiles, but the likelihood of being able to get a shed is very low. Because they're going to shed in underground.
Okay.
So you might, if they're having a rough time of it, or if they've been roughed up by a cage mate, you can get like a flake of skin off of them. But you're not going to get a lot for shed testing.
Yeah, because that's the only other way I can think to do it.
Sometimes I will find it when they're having a rough time shedding. Spare skin will accumulate in the armpit region.
Okay, maybe that could be a way.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
I guess it would depend. I guess you need to have their genome, right? Or
yeah, you have to know if they're, because there's like different like ZZ or what was the all this other stuff. I don't even know what they would be. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so we need a little bit. I mean, there's so much research done on them. Again, you'd think that we have something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it would be nice if we can at least do that. That would be something.
Yeah.
Any questions from the listeners? Any else?
I don't think I see any more. Hey, Jordan, yeah, care sheets. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no other questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well, how can people? Great episode. I really enjoyed it. I could tell we have a lot in common. And scientific process is very interesting. Or I don't know, very nice to talk to somebody about that. But if people have questions, is there a way to like reach out or anything like that? How you can drop your socials or how people can reach out to you?
So technically I'm on Facebook. Good luck getting in touch with me there. I am I have videos on TikTok. I'm not very active on TikTok. I do try to keep up with the comments there. YouTube is kind of the same story. Best way to get in touch with me is Instagram.
Okay.
I'm not as active there as I used to be with posting videos and photos of the of my animals, but I try. But I'm actually more active in my Instagram DMs at the moment than I am in my email inbox.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because I can easily do that when I can easily answer questions when I'm scrolling my phone up with the baby in the middle of the night. Yeah. Email is not as easy to manage for some reason, but in the informal environment of Instagram DMs, I can communicate relatively quickly.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Well, great episode. Well, yeah, Jordan, thanks for tapping in, guys. This will be on.
Thanks for the comments.
There'll be, go where we can rewatch it. So yeah, a lot of people rewatch it the next couple days. And again, fantastic episode. Thanks so much for your time, and have a great rest of your night, and hope you get some sleep with the newborn and all that goes well.
Yeah, she's teething. We'll see.
Okay. Awesome. All right. I'll take you off screen and you're good to go. So again, thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
All right, guys. Fantastic episode. I really enjoyed that one. It was just great being able to talk to somebody with, similar back 4-H and just the love for animals and the science and the way just to question things and, kind of raise, break through that glass ceiling that we talked about a little bit. So thanks for tapping in. I'll see you guys next week. It's my birthday, actually, so we'll see if I have an episode or not. And go from there. But I hope you have a great start to your week. Reach out in the DMs if you've got questions, suggestions. Your guys' support means the world to me. And thanks again. And with that, all right.